Hello, and welcome to the Spec Shaman Podcast, a show that explores the world of building product manufacturers, architects and engineers, sustainable design, and technology and trends. We engage in thought-provoking discussions with renowned experts, industry pioneers, and visionaries who are making a significant impact in the construction industry. Join us as we explore groundbreaking ideas, revolutionary concepts, and the latest advancements shaping the built environment. The Spec Shaman Podcast is hosted by Laura Elliott, the lead instructional designer at Ron Blank and Associates. Laura is a seasoned interviewer with a passion for uncovering the untold stories behind success. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let's get started.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. I am here with Terry Swack, CEO and founder of Sustainable Minds, and a longtime friend of Tara and Brad Blank, and an ardent admirer of Ron Blank, our head of staff here. Welcome, Terry. It is so good to see you and to be able to talk with you today.
Great to be here, and thank you for having me, Laura.
Absolutely. You have been, like I said, a longtime friend of Brad and Tara and Ron, and the work that is done with sustainability in mind. And we are really excited to have this conversation and to delve into the wonderful things that you have been creating with Sustainable Minds over the last couple of decades. So could you share the origins of your company and how Sustainable Minds got started and has evolved over the years?
Yeah, so that could take hours, but I will try to compress that. And if I leave anything out, just prompt me with a question. But many years ago, I was a graphic designer, and I got involved in the internet very early in the 90s and developed a lot of the early methodology around user experience, strategy, and design. And at the height of the internet bubble, I sold that company to an big internet roll-up kind of company. And then I helped some friends get a network security software company off the ground. Mm-hmm. But I was looking for something to really be passionate about, and I am passionate about design with a capital D, meaning solving really hard problems to get people to understand things and take action on things in a different way. So design is all about communication. But design on the internet, I built a lot of online business systems. And when I learned about clean energy in 2004, 2005, I said, that is the most important thing to be working on. Mm-hmm. I want to take what I know how to do and apply it to something that matters. And so I got involved in a clean energy special interest group through the MIT Enterprise Forum, started to learn everything I could about every kind of clean energy. Hydrogen fuel cells, algae systems, utility, everything I could to figure out where could I fit in. And I came to realize that there weren't a lot of great green products in the marketplace. And I left out the step where people in this organization, we started a business plan competition. And through this entrepreneurism, I recognize how are people going to really get motivated and get behind a clean energy economy if they didn't know what the future could look like? And so that was the inspiration to create a company called The Beam. And The Beam was a content, community, and commerce destination to deliver on the demand and create the demand for cleaner and greener products and services. So part of that product So I got that funded. I raised a lot of money in venture capital and angel investment because people saw the opportunity. But when we were trying to build the shopping center, we couldn't find a lot of products that were, quote unquote, green. This was 2005, 2006. Mm-hmm. And that's because, green doesn't mean anything as a word. And even manufacturers who would care about making greener products didn't know how. And so I started Sustainable Minds with the idea that I could build an even more impactful company if we could build tools with the knowledge built in that would allow product teams to understand what green means. So that's code for environmental performance, and to be able to evaluate the environmental performance of products and systems in early stage design, so they could actually make trade-off decisions, make better decisions about what to make, what to change across the life cycle of a product to bring truly greener or higher performing products to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward a few years, we brought our first tool to market in 2009, and in 2012, we started to focus on the green building market because that was the industry that cared about green without being regulated. LEED had done a great job of, the USGBC had done a great job of making LEED an aspirational brand. And so we started looking at how do we bring what we know about life cycle assessment and life cycle thinking into the green building space. And LEED introduced LEED version 4, which introduced these transparency credits for environmental performance and material health. We were able to see the opportunity to help manufacturers do LCAs and publish these EPDs. So let's put all that stuff in one place where the industry of professionals who cared, who were avidly looking for those brands and those products, could easily go and find everything all in one place. And we also recognize that the way products get into projects is if they get into the specification. And so the transparency catalog has always been organized by master format since the beginning. And that became the connection into the world of Ron Blank and Associates.
Yeah, so specifications and Ron Blank are sometimes synonymous. Well, I can't tell you how impressive that is, for us that, I understand it, especially from an academic standpoint. I was in college right around the time that you were starting to build this. And I remember a lot of sustainability oriented concerns. My background was in international relations. And so there was a lot of initiative to try to make our supply chains better, make the way we build things better, because the long-term impacts of not doing something environmentally forward were very clear to a lot of leaders. So from my perspective, to see the arc that you have developed over that period of time, I remember when those things weren't in place, when it wasn't possible, right? And one of the greatest accomplishments is to see some of these things be implemented, right? And that we're creating these spaces where it's possible to actually truly make something environmentally sustainable, and that's amazing. When you were developing your company, what are some of the key offerings that you have created, and how do they contribute to sustainability for building product manufacturers?
Right. So I mentioned that our first product was this streamlined eco-design and LCA tool to help product manufacturers understand the life cycle impacts and be able to make changes. And then as LEED version 4 became more prominent and people really figured out that multi-attribute disclosures were going to be more valuable than the single attribute disclosures in LEED version 3, we created the first cloud-based environmental product declaration that integrated product transparency with product marketing. So it gives the manufacturers the opportunity to tell their stories about what they're actually doing to improve, so that it isn't just a document of lots of technical data that nobody understands. It has to include the technical data to be an EPD, but what we've done was layer into it that the manufacturers actually understand what they're reporting in that technical data and can explain what they're doing to make those kinds of improvements, because environmental performance and material health are performance criteria that sit alongside functional performance, cost, aesthetics, safety, and people are making decisions using these new criteria with these other criteria. So our question was, why would you put environmental and material information that uses selection criteria separate and apart from like your product information, your product brochure that has all the other information people need to use to make decisions? Why wouldn't that all be in one place? Particularly so that the salespeople in those organizations could speak knowledgeably to all of those performance attributes, really use it to help tell a better brand story in the marketplace, and also to create training tools that people inside their organization could use when speaking to prospects and customers about products. And then that led to ultimately creating the transparency catalog. We also, realized it's a lot of work for manufacturers to create LCAs and EPDs. So we are the only end-to-end product transparency solutions provider in the market. So we are a program operator. We develop product category rules. We also deliver lifecycle assessment services and material health services, publish the environmental product declarations, and then get all of that content into the transparency catalog, which is a marketing platform. People don't think about EPDs and material ingredient disclosures as marketing tools, but that is what they are. Manufacturers win bids. And so the transparency catalog, at the end of that creation journey, is where we work with the manufacturer to leverage those investments to get their brand and products in front of the people that are looking for those brands and products. So being the only end-to-end solution provider makes it really easy for manufacturers, particularly ones who are kind of entering into this realm for the first time. They don't have to hunt around and put together different teams to work with. They can work with us, and we do everything from the beginning to then, launching. And included in that transparency catalog subscription is training for their internal salespeople, distributors, and partners. What is product transparency? Why is it important? What has the manufacturer invested in? And how they use the transparency catalog in their day-to-day interactions with customers. The thing we're working on now is to roll out a new application in the transparency catalog that allows project teams in architecture firms, construction companies, real estate owners, government agencies to now build their own internal digital libraries of preferred products, and do that collaboratively. So it's a collaboration environment for building shared libraries and building shared projects, again, all organized by master format, and now enabling people to source materials very simply without having to go through the challenge of the gaps between the tools that get used by different professionals in that disconnected workflow. We're connecting the workflows to create one collaborative environment where selecting, specifying, sourcing, and procuring can all happen by all the people who need to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, that one collaborative environment is such a key detail, because there's so much time management challenges when you're having everyone be in separate corners and trying to come together, with all the information that they're gathering. So that feature of it is so remarkable. I know you took Brad and myself through some of that, and it was just so impressive, the way that teams can work together and discuss the projects even within the cloud system that you've created. It's just wonderful. Was that really the inspiration to try to break down those time management barriers and those communication barriers so everyone can work together seamlessly?
Yeah. So again, Sustainable Minds, from the story that I've told you, you can tell that we are advocates for the manufacturer. So our mission as a company, we're a mission-based for-profit company, but our mission is to operationalize environmental performance and material health into mainstream product development and manufacturing to drive revenue and growth through greener and healthier innovation, right? Because companies still have to grow. The economy still needs to grow. They have to do it differently. And so everything we're doing is in service of helping manufacturers not only make better products, but market better products and get those products into projects. So after working with so many people over the years in that end-to-end, early stage design, specification, procurement, and installation, frankly, I don't even understand how buildings get built. It's so complicated. Of hearing these stories over and over again about the challenges design teams have to apply parameters for material selection, but then how do they communicate that to the specifier, and the specifier is limited by the tools that they use, and then how does that get conveyed to the pre-construction folks, where they have to go put together a bid for a project that may have the intent to meet LEED or WELL or other non-certified performance goals, but they have to meet the design intent of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know where to go source those particular materials, because they may not be from the manufacturers that they have traditional relationships with at distributors. And so they spend tons of time looking, how do we source those things? And then you have the poor manufacturers like wondering, why don't these products get purchased? How are we supposed to pay back the investment we've made in transparency if these things aren't getting purchased?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's like just problems every step of the way,
Mm-hmm.
so many hurdles in communication that needed first to be understood, and then to be, then think about, well, how do we actually build a solution to address not just one disconnected part, but the entire disconnected workflow? How can we actually make it one connected workflow? We've interviewed hundreds of architecture, engineering, construction folks, as well as the hundreds of manufacturers we worked with over the years, to really first deeply understand what their challenges are, and then what their goals are. What are they trying to achieve, each of them? How do they make money? And so it's just taken a long time to solve a whole bunch of problems all in one place. But we feel we've been pretty successful, and the market response has also been very, extremely positive. So we're pretty excited.
No, it's very exciting, because these are huge problems that you're discussing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because making the investment to make a product that has more of a sustainability focus, and then getting that to be installed, that's a huge, set of steps that has to be accomplished. So it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful resource. You just said that the manufacturers are receiving it really well, and it's definitely getting great traction. You recently attended Greenbuild. So how do you see the future of sustainability progress points? Is the reception that the manufacturer is giving a good indicator, that we are moving towards a more sustainable future?
Well, it's the architecture and construction industry that's driving the demand. So the response to Project Builder has been, we've been focused on the architecture and construction industry because this is a tool for them to be able to build their own internal digital libraries of preferred products from the brands they like. This is a massive need, because right now, no architecture firm, and maybe some larger construction companies, but really should be building their own technology solutions, because it's expensive, it's hard to do, they go out of date. And further, maintaining product data, the quality of that data is only good as the attention that people give it in maintaining it. So nobody likes doing that. Those things are generally just out of date. So the ability to combine, the most robust, well-structured sort of end-to-end workflow pretty much solves every problem that they've been struggling with along the way, and finally enables them to achieve climate commitments, material health commitments. They haven't had any way to operationalize those commitments and share that knowledge and get consistency in the way things get done across organizations. So, while we've helped operationalize environmental performance and material health for manufacturers, we're now helping the design and construction industry align their practices and their internal processes to do the same.
So in some ways, would you say you're acting almost like a liaison between the two to create that success for sustainable design?
Well, I think the platform, a collaborative environment, provides the opportunity for people to work with whoever they want. But like today in the transparency catalog, you can use it for free, and you can select products and download the content to a spreadsheet. So that's one way to use your word of creating a liaison. But that's what marketing is, right? It's a marketing platform where manufacturers can make their brands and their products found. With Project Builder and Library, we're simply operationalizing the ability for project teams and organizations to find and select those brands and those manufacturers, and then reuse those decisions and that product information instead of having to solve the problem every single time they go to work on a project. And that's a big problem with, today, particularly as physical libraries are getting phased out of architecture firms. People won't go to the office. These sampling services are really filling a huge need by, quickly allowing project teams to order samples and getting them overnight. But then after the products have been evaluated and maybe the information does get into the project, where does that evaluation information live on after that? Where can people go find and not have to evaluate and review the same products time and time again? Or if somebody did it in one office, but the company has 10 other offices, should people in 10 offices every time have to
right?
The idea of being a liaison, we're really creating an environment that streamlines and accelerates getting work done.
I think that's really key to the whole thing, is to create that streamlined process so that the time isn't wasted, in re-reviewing everything. You touched a little bit on EPDs. Can you explain the significance of them and the role that they play in this process, and how Sustainable Minds contributes to developing them and helping them be usable?
Right. So starting out with, what is an EPD? So the actual technical name of that particular disclosure is an ISO 14025 Type 3 environmental declaration. So it is described in ISO 14025 about how to report the life cycle environmental impacts of products. And colloquially, people have created the term environmental product declaration and then shortened it to EPD. So that's not even the actual technical name. It's a colloquial term, but that's the one that seemed to have stuck. But in ISO 14025, it says program operators can call their Type 3 environmental declarations anything they want. That's why we called ours a transparency report, because it's so much more than what you typically see. When you see an EPD, people generally get a many-page technical document with lots of tabular data that they don't understand. And so we said that's not what people need. Like, we couldn't understand how an architect, engineer, contractor, or real estate owner could ever make a decision on about a product from that kind of document. But today, and since I'm going to say 4 years ago, the presence of an awareness of carbon and the need to mitigate the amount of carbon emissions that are going into the environment has really become front and center for the building construction industry. Architecture 2030 did a great job of articulating that story several years ago and really igniting a fire, people to understand that the impacts from embodied carbon are far outweighing and will over time considerably outweigh the impacts of operational carbon. So embodied carbon are the carbon emissions. So we're using carbon to represent all greenhouse gases. So we're just using carbon as a shorthand, but all of the greenhouse gases, carbon emissions emitted during the manufacture of a product. And operational carbon is all of the carbon emissions generated in the operation of a building. So there's lots of ways to mitigate emissions in building operation. There's energy efficiency strategies, there's daylighting, there's the way a building is put on a site, there's more insulation, there's turning the thermostat down, there's buying renewable energy. There's lots of things you can do to reduce operational carbon, but embodied carbon is from the raw material extraction, the manufacture of a product. Once the product's been made, once that stuff has been made, you can't put that back in the bottle. That's out there. And so the awareness has really taken hold that manufacturers have to reduce the carbon emissions in the creation of a product. The only way to know, the only place that's reported or measured first is in a life cycle assessment, because the LCA is measuring the global warming impacts across the full life cycle. So embodied carbon is just the first part, A1 through A3, which is manufacturing. And so environmental product declarations are the public-facing disclosure that reports the embodied carbon emissions of that product. So now, as people are really on board with reducing embodied carbon, everybody is looking for EPDs, because EPDs are the disclosure where that information can be found. And so not only do we, as I mentioned, we are a program operator, we deliver LCA services, we publish environmental product declarations. We also partner with an organization called Building Transparency, and they have a tool called the Embodied Carbon and Construction Calculator, also known as EC3. We started partnering with them when they were in alpha and just earliest stages of design, because the EC3 tool allows people to compare the embodied carbon impacts of products in each category. Well, we already had a database of EPDs. We actually gave them our EPDs, and we looked at their methodology of the way they were doing comparisons, because traditionally EPDs cannot be compared because there's so many variables in them. But they came up with a methodology that was pretty controversial, but they documented it. And what they do is they take all of the embodied carbon impacts reported in an EPD in each product category. And so they establish an industry range of reported embodied carbon impacts per product category. And then they compare the reported impact in a single EPD to the industry range to say, because people only want to know, is something better or worse than something else? That's all they want to know.
Right.
And where does it fall in that spectrum? And so we developed with them a custom API for us to distill that relative value into 5 quintiles. So 20th, 40th, 60th, 60 plus, 80 plus. So that what we do now in the transparency catalog is we add the quintile result next to the EPD, so that visually now people can see if the product is in the lowest 20th percentile or 40th percentile or 60th percentile. Everything we do in the transparency catalog is kind of an extension of what I had explained about the transparency report to make the results understandable. So the same thing in the transparency catalog, we're trying to make the results of EPDs and the results of material ingredient disclosures understandable so that people can make better choices, but to be able to do it quickly and easily. You can filter by 20th percentile and then only see products with EPDs that by comparison show that they are in the lowest 20th percentile of all other products with EPDs in that category. And we've done similar things with HPDs and other material ingredient disclosures.
No, when we did the tour for that, when you took us through it, that was one of the things that I thought was really visually interesting. That quick extraction of information is so relevant to the people that are designing and making these decisions, because they have a lot of things to review. Research takes a lot of time, a lot of the time. Yeah, it's a very useful tool.
Thank you.
Yes. And impressive in its scope and breadth for sure. What do you believe is the biggest challenge manufacturers face when it comes to the environmental reporting and material ingredient reporting?
Well, there's a number of things. One is it's expensive to do because it requires generally it will require using some outside consultants initially. Until they can develop those skills internally. If they ever do that, it's not that common, but we advocate for that. We actually will train manufacturers, people inside their organizations to do LCA and material ingredient disclosure. Again, it's part of our mission is to operationalize that.
What do you believe is the biggest challenge for building?
Oh, the blocker. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's cost, there's knowledge, there's fear.
Yeah,
we don't really want to disclose all this stuff. What if it comes out bad? Or we've got proprietary ingredients. We've got confidential information. We don't want to be disclosing all of that. We don't want to look worse than our competitors. There's lots of things. Lack of knowledge, lack of necessarily motivation. We're doing just great. We haven't lost any business yet. There's lots of reasons people delay. There's clearly no going back. Transparency is here to stay because at the end of the day, people measure what matters. And measuring environmental impacts and understanding and measuring the material health of products.
And I think the thing that really is striking a chord with me, it's almost like there is a waltz occurring. This is my dance analogy.
Okay. All right.
So if you talk about the AEC community and you talk about the building product manufacturers, and it's like they're moving towards sustainable approaches in design and in production, and they have to kind of move together. And for me, it's watching the measurable buy-in increase. And with something that you're creating, it allows that to happen. It facilitates those areas where we can progress together. And I think that that's what's so marvelous about what you've done. And it's also like the teach the man to fish.
That's exactly right. Yep. We're all about that. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing because you could be proprietary, right? I know how to do all of these things and it's my secret and I'm not going to share it, but instead you're sharing that operability with anybody who's interested in doing that buy-in. And that's really impressive. So, it's something, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, one other thing we've done, again, because as a mission-based company, we're trying to move the market. We want our activities to be measurable in terms of changing the way products get made and how buildings get built. And so as a marketing platform, manufacturers, marketing executives are looking for analytics. If I put my products in here, how am I going to know if anybody's seeing them? So we have a really powerful analytics dashboard that manufacturers get access to as part of their annual subscription. And what we've done is put the reports together to kind of tell a story. So the first report gives them the overall activity of what's happening in the catalog, number of users, number of page views, number of searches. Because, if we're the transparency catalog, then we're going to be transparent about how much activity is actually happening in the catalog on any given day. And then the next report shows, and they can set the date range on any of these, it shows how many direct searches are being done on every master format section. So a manufacturer considering putting their products into the catalog would first say, well, are there enough people coming to the catalog looking for products in the sections my products are in. The next report shows the number of times a manufacturer was viewed in search results, the number of times a manufacturer's disclosures or other content in their listing was clicked and downloaded. And so not only does the manufacturer, do they know all of that information for their own products, we decided to make it possible for manufacturers to see everyone else's data too. So it's completely transparent, because the way you make a market is to create competition.
Right.
So if I'm a marketing manager in, company B, and I'm coming in to an industry where company A has already been in the catalog, and I can see, wow, they've got EPDs and HPDs or declare labels or whatever type of material ingredient disclosure they have for all of their products, and we only have them for 2 or 3. I can go look and see how much activity that manufacturer, much visibility that manufacturer is getting for those products. What are people clicking on and downloading? And it helps me manufacturer B, make my decisions internally every year when we have to think about what are we going to budget this year for product transparency and technical marketing. Well, look, our competitors are doing this, this, and this. We don't have that. Do we need to have market parity? Does it not matter? And so, in all of the reports, the default view is always most to least. So you can see in a glance, like the top most performing and searched on manufacturers, and then you can go and search on any manufacturer, your name, any other name. So yeah, it literally is about helping manufacturers see how the investment in transparency is paying off for others, not just themselves.
Yeah, and that business to adopt sustainable practices, the tools that you're creating helps to demonstrate the way that the market is shifting. And so they can kind of see that in real time. And
that's right. That's exactly right.
It's awfully clever to be transparent with your transparency catalog.
Yeah.
And that's that the topic of integrity and honesty comes up a lot on this podcast. And so it's definitely in line with that. There's an integral part of being honest, about what you're doing so that everyone can see it at the same time. I think that's lovely, And
it feels good, right? Because you want people to understand what's happening, and people need proof,
right?
Lots of people just need convincing,
right?
And so, what better way to convince somebody of something is to show them data,
right? Measurable outcome goes quite a long way. On a personal note, could you share with us some of the insights into your workflow process? What you're talking about, the scope and breadth of your work, is large, right? It's not a small thing that you're endeavoring in. How do you approach your daily accomplishing your tasks and getting this thing moving forward and productive?
I have a great team. Big things only happen through teams and collaboration. I have a great team. I mentioned that my background is design, and my career has been all about building customer-centered online businesses through deeply understanding people and then building things that will, that are useful, usable, and will delight them. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to say that it's not, but it's very fulfilling. And when you work with great people and, you can see things changing, it's exciting.
No, team definitely. It's the thing that I observe a lot is when a manufacturer comes to us, you can see the effort and the care that goes into a really successful business. And there is the vision I think that you carry is what I think stands out to me the most. To understand the macro and the micro is such a skill. And And I definitely can see how you have honed it to create something that really answers what the industry's needed. Is you have a personal philosophy that you orient your work to, that helps to guide how you enact a vision, like Sustainable Minds?
So just going back to I'm a designer.
Yeah.
And I changed my traditional design business, graphic design business, into an internet strategy and product development firm back in the 90s when the internet was new. And we developed a lot of the early methodology around user experience strategy and design.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the definition or the formula for user experience is usefulness, usability, and desirability. So it goes in that order. Is the product useful? And if yes, to whom? Has it been designed to be useful to a particular set of key user types? And then if it is useful, is it usable?
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if it's beautifully designed or really easy to use if it's not useful.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that you picked up on that earlier. That's what you said. This is really useful. Right. That's the number one box you got to check.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you create something that's both useful and usable, then you have to make it desirable. So that's the third piece of the equation.
Right.
And like, do I want to use it? Do I love using it? Does it really make my day? What is it about this tool or this product that gets people just like, I got to use it. I love it. And so, focusing on usefulness, usability, and desirability, and through deep insights about users, and then designing and building things that they really need and would use and love to use. That's my personal philosophy.
It's very anthropological in nature, right? Anticipating how something will apply to someone and that they will continue to come back to, because you can use something one time, right? But it's that continual buy back in and let's stay here and work here. And I think that's not always easy to anticipate what the needs will be and how they'll evolve.
But it's not about anticipating. You were right. I mean, this type of work is informed by ethnographic research.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, you can't, people often think that design is like, oh, I'm just going to make something up. Like, no, design is a business process of taking information and turning it into something that is useful or communicates, depending on what the problem is. But long ago, again back in the 90s, when we were developing a lot of this early user research, user experience design, we developed qualitative user research methods that help design teams identify key user types in a way to create persona for these user types with a deep understanding of who they are, what they need, whether it's a commercial or a business. And it's a very, you create a very rich profile of a user type. It doesn't need to be an actual person. I mean, it's a model of a person based on this deep understanding. And from that informs, what to make.
So what are some notable projects or partnerships that have had a significant impact on Sustainable Minds' mission and its growth?
Yeah, I love this question because a lot of times people don't necessarily think about a customer as a partner, but our best partners have been our customers. And I want to start out talking about Toto, the plumbing products manufacturer. And back in 2010, I gave a talk at the Plumbing Manufacturers Industry Association. And we had our eco-concept and LCA software tool in the market. We were talking about designing products, greener products right from the start, and integrating life cycle assessment into product development, and the president of North American operations for Toto was in the audience, and he was really on fire about how to use life cycle thinking and LCA to drive innovation. And so we started to we delivered a lot of training and a lot of subscriptions for our software into their product development organization, and they actually set up a workflow ultimately where no new product could go into production without having a Sustainable Minds LCA report accompanying it.
Oh, wow.
And they added a point in their stage gate process where that was part of getting a new product into development. And Bill Strang is his name. Bill was so committed to this process that when lead version 4 was announced in 2012, introducing environmental product declarations and the EPD credit, Bill was very interested in, well, if we've been designing using LCA, how do we get involved with lead? And you have to remember, Toto was not a known entity back then. They were entrants. They were the largest plumbing products manufacturer in Asia, but had no footprint in North America. And so we ended up working very closely with Bill and his team to invent our transparency reports as an alternative to traditional EPDs. And we created a whole series of transparency reports for Toto and introduced them in 2023 at Greenbuild. And they were the first plumbing products manufacturer to be transparent with marketing tools. And then the next year we became a program operator and turned the transparency reports into actually type 3 environmental declarations and published more for Toto. And the story just goes on with them. We worked with them to develop the material health overview, which is a way of taking HPDs and declare labels and turning them into understandable marketing tools. Mm-hmm. Toto became one of our first customers when we launched the transparency catalog. And Bill really used to showcase Sustainable Minds in their booths at Greenbuild. Mm-hmm. Like, it was one year I showed up and the entire exterior wall of their booth had a big Sustainable Minds logo and
that's awesome.
And a front page of one of their transparency reports. And he put QR codes on the labels next to products in the booth where you could focus on the QR code and go right to the transparency report. He knew how to tell that story. And one of the culminations of that investment was when Apple was building their spaceship building and their new campus. Bill flew out there. He printed out a bunch of transparency reports, which are beautifully designed. So I'm a designer; they're beautifully designed. Mm-hmm. He flew out there and told this story to Apple about product innovation and sustainability, and they won the bid for that project. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Another great partner has been Knopf Insulation, and around about 2016, 2015. We started working with the gentleman who was their head of essentially sustainability, but he had a collage of titles, and Scott Miller, his name, and Scott is a brilliant engineer and developed a lot of the firsts for Knopf in the insulation industry to be the first to have their entire portfolio to be formaldehyde free. They created a new binder that was formaldehyde free, the first with recycled content, the first with a lot of different things. And when I met him, he said, I want to do something different with our EPDs. And so what happened was we not only developed, I think it was 12 or 13 transparency reports for their portfolio. And remember, a transparency report is an EPD. It's our marketing tool in the cloud. And in 2017, we introduced with Knopf at Greenbuild the first version of Project Builder and Library, which was specific to Knopf,
Mm-hmm.
where it was all about teaching people how to specify insulation and how to build a really unique kind of tool to drive product selection driven through the lens of transparency, and for the sales organization to have an automated tool to respond to quotes and specifications. And from there, we began work on Project Builder and Library that we're rolling out now, because after solving that problem for one manufacturer in the transparency catalog,
Mm-hmm.
the next question was, how do we take it across the entire transparency catalog? And so we learned an enormous amount from their A&D reps, their spec reps, from their training people, and then, ended up taking those learnings and developing the same kind of questions and interviews with the same kinds of people in other manufacturing firms, and to ultimately come up with a strategy for Project Builder and Library across the whole catalog. And I wouldn't be able to not answer this question. I wouldn't be able to answer this question without probably giving kudos to our most important partner, who isn't a customer, but is an investor in Sustainable Minds, and that's Autodesk. And so when I started the company and needed to raise some money, I went to Carl Bass, the CEO of Autodesk then, and they had just acquired Revit the year before, which was on track to being the the go-to parametric 3D modeling tool for the design industry,
Mm-hmm.
and green building. And so I said to Carl, you already made an investment on the architecture side, but you don't have any tools for designing greener products on the manufacturing side.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever make investments in startups? He said, yep, we do it all the time. And they ended up making 3 investments early on that not only helped us get off the ground, but it put us on the map. We were exhibited a few times with them at the IDSA conference, the Industrial Designers Society of America, and gave us credibility early on that we never could have had that kind of impact. So partners are, it's really of what you make of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You can find partners in a lot of places, and even companies that you think might be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Co-opetition is a powerful thing. How can you go after a market together? So
there's power.
That's my partner response.
No, it's a great one, and it's really fascinating. The scope of your experience is really interesting, I think, and I know our audience is going to love to hear it. We are wrapping up. It's the last question, and it's a big one, right? And it's, how do you envision the future of sustainability? For someone like yourself, you have so much vision, and to see what you've created in the time that you've been building what you've been building is so impressive. What do you think it's going to be next for building product manufacturers and the AEC industry? And how will Sustainable Minds continue to impact the shaping of that future?
Well, I think there won't be the word sustainability used very much. We don't use it at all. It's only in our name. And our vision from the very beginning was to get to a time when designing things to be sustainable wasn't even a thing. It's just how you design. And the earliest analogy was product safety. There was a time when products weren't safe, and then safety became a thing. And then products were designed with safety in mind. And now products are required to be safe. And it can be a competitive advantage how safe something is. But now with really the advent of change in language. People don't really talk about green building so much anymore. We talk about high performance building. Environmental performance and material health are performance criteria. This is what we talk about all the time. They're performance criteria that sit alongside functional performance, cost, aesthetics, safety, all of the traditional criteria that people use to make decisions. Now, environmental performance and material health are criteria that people use to make decisions. And so manufacturers that want to win in the high performance building space will continue to understand where the environmental impacts are, where there's potential risks and hazards posed by the materials that they use, and improve the performance of their products through that knowledge. And if they choose to use those stories about those performance improvements as part of their marketing and product positioning.
I love it. Make it normal, right? Make it their requirement. And that's I think that's where we're headed. And it's thanks to people like you that are creating such wonderful things to make that possible.
You're very kind, Laura.
It's very true. We can't thank you enough over at RBA. We're so excited that you came here today and had this conversation, and we look forward to talking with you again in the future very soon.
And thank you, Laura. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Spec Shaman Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our show and leave us a review. The Spec Shaman Podcast is produced by Laura Elliott and Brad Blank. A huge thank you to our guests who made this show possible. Building product manufacturers who want to increase their specification opportunities, please visit specshaman.com or ronblank.com. Thanks all for this episode, folks. See you next time.